5,227 meters. That's how far her bullet traveled through swirling wind, shifting pressure, and 10 seconds of complete silence. No spotter could have called it. No computer could have calculated it. And she didn't aim for the man who killed her team. She aimed for the transformer behind him, crippling the entire operation. One shot, zero casualties, mission complete. And then she walked away. No medals, no interviews, just the quiet return of a ghost who once saved a ridge alone. This is the story of Madeline Shore and the target she chose not to take. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching this from? And what's the most powerful story of redemption you've ever seen or felt? Welcome to Grateful Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. The wind bit harder the higher they climbed. At 9,300 feet above sea level, in the jagged spine of the Black Pine Range, Montana's silence was not peaceful. It was surgical, brutal, clean, a sniper's kind of silence. Madeline Shore lay prone in a nest of snow and carbon fiber insulation, her face steady behind the scope. The wind screamed past the ridge, curling and shifting like a living thing. She didn't flinch. She had been here before. To her left, Master Sergeant Reed Mallory adjusted the spotting scope with slow, deliberate hands. "Target window in 70 seconds, he said, voice calm, even as his breath crystallized in the freezing air. Wind shear at top ridge layer is shifting east. 12 knots. Madeline didn't answer. She already knew. Her fingers, bare and steady, adjusted the rear control of her custom-built rifle, built for one purpose only. Across the valley, 5,027 meters away, a stone and glass hunting lodge sat like a fortress surrounded by evergreens and ice. It was beautiful. It was deadly. Inside, somewhere beyond the ornate windows, moved a man whose name no longer appeared on official records. Nikolai Ronsky, war criminal, traitor, ghost. She exhaled once, slow and shallow, sinking her pulse to the space between heartbeats. That space was her kingdom. That silence, her cathedral. Thorne's voice returned. 10 seconds. Main hall. Window exposure. Target approaching. She didn't need the call out. Through her scope, she saw him enter, taller than she remembered. Older, but still with that arrogant gait, surrounded by guards. Laughing, it would be easy. Her finger found the trigger with the elegance of a pianist. No tension, no rush. 9 years of training, 7 years of disappearance, 4 hours of lying still in sub-zero wind. All of it pointed to this one breath. And then she shifted her aim 2 inches left. Not to his head, not to his chest, but to a junction box mounted behind the outer wall. Power conduit, central relay. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked. 10 seconds of stillness passed. Then, on the far side of the valley, the lodge erupted in sparks and darkness. Lights gone. Systems fried. Panic set in the comms. Silence. Then a voice. "Ma'am." "Did you?" Madeline began disassembling the rifle before Mallory could finish the question. "Target neutralized," she said, calm as the snow around her. "We move. Now." Mallory blinked, trying to process, "But you didn't." "You could have." "I didn't miss," she replied, securing the bolt carrier. That shot was the mission. His mouth opened, but no words came. Behind them, Sergeant Kwan and Specialist Rivera were already breaking down the observation post with military efficiency. 30 seconds later, the four of them began the descent into the pine forest, leaving no heat signature, no brass, no trace. Overhead, 2 unmarked helicopters approached the lodge from opposing directions. A coordinated joint task force. They had waited for a signal. This was it. Back inside the lodge, emergency lights flickered to life. Shouts echoed. Security scrambled. Nikolai Ronsky barked commands in Russian, unaware that their location, presence, and identities had all just been confirmed and transmitted to every relevant agency within the hour. He had no idea the world was already closing in. 2 miles down the mountain, at the primary extraction point, Madeline knelt behind a fallen log and swapped out her snow camouflage for a thermal shield wrap. Her hands moved with the rhythm of decades. Mallory crouched beside her, finally speaking again. You had him in the glass. You had 10 seconds, and you chose a junction box. She looked at him, eyes calm and unreadable. That's not what you would have done, she asked. He hesitated. After what he did to your team, no, I wouldn't have hesitated. She slung the rifle case over her shoulder and stood. That's why I'm Ghost 7. And you're not. The words weren't cruel. They were simply true. 10 minutes later, the chopper arrived, low and quiet. They boarded with minimal conversation. Rivera secured the intel packet. Quan encrypted the drone footage. Mallory sat in silence, watching Madeline check her gear again and again. Rifle, tools, optics, calibrations. She was methodical, obsessive, controlled. Why not just kill him, he asked. Finally, no one would have questioned it. You earned that shot. Madeline paused, then turned toward the small round window. Outside, the sun was rising over the snowfields, brilliant and sharp. She watched it for a moment. Then she said, without turning, I didn't come here to kill a man. I came to end an operation. Mallory leaned forward. And what about justice? I gave the world what it needs to deliver it, she answered. That was my job. Not revenge, not closure, just confirmation. The hum of the rotors filled the silence. She looked down at her gloves, then slowly peeled them off, exposing the scarred knuckles beneath. There's always a cost when you pull the trigger, she said quietly. The more skilled you are, the higher the price. He didn't ask what that meant. He already knew. 36 hours later, the world would know what happened. Nikolai Ronsky, apprehended alive. Dozens of weapons traffickers arrested. An international summit dismantled. A major security operation concluded with 0 casualties and one name classified above all else. Ghost 7. Back at Black Pine Base, the snow had started falling again. Inside the armory, a small light glowed above a single workbench. Madeline Shore sat alone, cleaning her rifle, each pass of the cloth deliberate, ritualistic. It was the same rifle she'd carried in Corsai, the same weapon that had ended one war and nearly started another. A weapon most believed belonged in a museum, but for her, it belonged in her hands. Colonel Hayes stepped into the doorway, watching her in silence for a moment. You could have ended it, he said. We gave you full autonomy. Madeline didn't look up. I know. Ronsky will spend the rest of his life in a cell, but some would say, I didn't pull the trigger for them, she interrupted softly. He nodded once, then set a single envelope on the table. Promotions on the table. Head of Advanced Marksmanship, JSO. She glanced at the envelope, then back to her rifle. No. Why not? She wiped the chamber clean. Because I already have a job, and they still need clean rifles. Hayes stepped back into the cold, leaving her alone once again. As the door closed, Madeline set the rifle down gently. No applause, no medals, no headlines. Just a quiet woman, one impossible shot, and a choice. That's where it starts. Not with who she was, but with who she chose to be. 3 months earlier, before the mountain shot that changed everything, Madeline Shore was invisible. She moved through the lower level of Black Pine Base like mist. Present, necessary, unseen. The armory was her sanctuary. Rows of rifles gleamed under cool white light, each labeled, categorized, indexed. She treated every weapon with the same precision, whether it belonged to a new recruit or an elite special forces unit. No one knew where she came from. No one asked. They called her ma'am out of habit, not respect. Most thought she was civilian support staff. A few assumed she was someone's retired aunt. Master Sergeant Reed Mallory never used her name. Just Tech, or you. On the first Monday of the rotation, his team swept into the armory like they owned the place. Loud, confident, carrying weapons as extensions of ego. He tossed a heavily customized MRAD rifle onto the bench beside her. "Clean it right," he said. Last guy scratched the bolt. She didn't look up. "The bolt's titanium. It doesn't scratch. It binds if you over-tighten the cam pin." Mallory blinked, caught off guard, then smirked. "Didn't ask for a science lecture. Tech." Madeline didn't answer. She simply picked up the rifle and began to disassemble it with movements that were smooth, efficient, surgical. In the weeks that followed, his team passed through daily. They joked around her, dropped magazines without apology, spoke as if she weren't in the room. She never reacted, but she always remembered every serial number, every bad torque setting, every overheard story, especially the one about the ghost at Corsai. They spoke of it like myth. A ridge too far, a team pinned for 14 hours, no visibility, no extraction, and then 23 clean shots from a distant hill. One by one, enemies dropped until the evac choppers arrived. They called the unknown shooter Ghost 7. Whoever it was, Mallory said, must have had a freaking AI in their brain. No human hits like that. The other snipers laughed. Madeline didn't even look up from the bolt carrier she was polishing. The challenge came during a live range rotation 2 weeks later. Black Pine's long-range course stretched across a narrow valley, with targets placed from 500 up to 3,200 meters. That day, strong crosswinds made even the 2,000 mark a gamble. Madeline was there to deliver cleaning kits. She stayed out of the way, as always, placing the kits on a bench, head down, sleeves rolled to the elbow. Her scarred knuckles caught the light. Mallory was already mid-brag, gathering a crowd of visiting contractors and junior operators. "Next week," he said, "I'm attempting 3,500 meters. That's where legends live." "Correction," someone muttered nearby. "That's where bullets go to die." Laughter rippled. Then someone nudged toward Madeline. "What about her?" A young corporal smirked. "Maybe she can hit 4,000. More laughter. Mallory raised his brows. "You want to embarrass her in front of contractors." "Hey," the corporal pushed. "Let's see if she can even hold a rifle." That's when Mallory turned fully to face her. "You hear that? Tech. You want to show us your skills." She stood still for a second. One breath, then walked forward. Not a word, just a quiet presence moving toward the shooting line, hands at her sides. The laughing slowed, then stopped. She extended one hand toward Mallory. "The rifle," she said. The tone was calm, but final. Mallory's grin faded, replaced with something sharper. He unshouldered his own rifle, the one she had just cleaned the day before, and placed it in her hands. "Scopes zeroed for me. Hope you know how to adjust." Madeline didn't touch a single dial. She lay prone, lined up the shot, and breathed once, then fired. The metal plate at 4,000 meters, barely visible to the naked eye, flashed with impact. A second later, the delayed echo of the shot returned across the range. No wind flags moved. No birds flew. No one said a word. She stood up, handed the rifle back, turned, and began walking away. Colonel Barrett Hayes arrived seconds later. Having watched the shot from the tower above, he didn't hesitate. His voice cut through the stunned silence. A tension reflex kicked in. Everyone snapped to position. The colonel walked to the firing line and called after her. "Major Shore, front and center." She paused, slowly turned, eyes steady. For the first time, everyone looked at her and saw someone different. Hayes saluted. "Ghost 7, he announced, his voice carrying Medal of Honor, defender of Corsai Ridge." The silence deepened. A few mouths opened in disbelief. Mallory looked like he'd been gut-punched. Madeline didn't return the salute. She didn't speak. She simply nodded once, then walked back toward the armory. She returned to her workbench, same as always. Sat down, picked up the same MRAD rifle and resumed cleaning it like nothing had happened. Word spread through the base within the hour. Within the day, it spread beyond. Recruiters started emailing. Journalists requested interviews. Command sent congratulations. A dozen bases offered her new assignments. She didn't answer any of them. Later that night, Mallory walked into the armory alone. He looked around, unsure how to start. Madeline didn't look up. She was reassembling the firing pin of a suppressed bolt rifle. "I didn't recognize you," he said. "I didn't ask you to." She replied, I remember hearing a voice over comms. Back in Corsai, during the extraction, it said, Ghost 7 in position. That was you." She nodded. "We thought you were a team, not one person. You weren't supposed to know," she said softly. "We weren't supposed to be there at all." He stepped closer. "Why here? Why spend years cleaning rifles when you could have been commanding half the program?" She locked the bolt, set the rifle down, because sometimes healing doesn't look like metals. It looks like wiping down steel and finding rhythm in the ordinary. He looked at her hand as a calloused, precise, quiet. "You're not just Ghost 7, he said, voice low. "You're the reason I'm alive." Madeline offered a half smile. "Then take care of your rifle better." That night, the base mess hall went quiet when she walked in. Every soldier stood. No order given. They just stood. She didn't make a speech. She grabbed a tray, poured black coffee, and sat alone at the edge of the room. Eyes still found her. But this time, they didn't mock. They watched with something new, respect, and a hint of fear. Back in the armory, after midnight, she opened her locker for the first time in months. Inside was a weathered patch, black fabric with faded embroidery. A number. 7, nothing else. She didn't pin it to her chest. She just held it, then closed the locker again. Outside, the wind howled across the mountains. But inside, for the first time in years, Madeline Shore didn't feel invisible anymore. The foothills of Corsai were dry, sun-scorched, and deceptively quiet. That morning, the sky had the hue of faded copper, like something had been burned into it and left a stain. 8 of them moved in staggered formation, navigating the ridgeline with practiced silence. Ghost Team didn't chatter. They didn't joke. Every breath had a purpose. Every step, a calculation. Madeline Shore was their overwatch, positioned half a kilometer above them on a sheer bluff. She lay flat on her stomach with a suppressed M82 cradled in her arms. Her scope swept the valley like a pendulum. To her left was Specialist Tanner, her spotter, young, steady, brilliant with wind calls. He chewed cinnamon gum during missions claimed it helped him focus. At Waru 7, 42 hours, she felt it before she saw it. A flicker, a glint too low in the brush, movement that didn't belong to the wind. Then the comms went hot. Break, Ghost 1. We've got thermal bloom at the South Ridge. Multiple. The detonation cut off the rest. Below, the ridge erupted in fire. The ground folded in on itself. Smoke choked the sky. She saw bodies flung like rag dolls, 6, maybe 7. Immediately down, one figure crawled toward a rock shelf, trailing blood. Madeline didn't feel her breath leave her. She didn't blink. She simply pivoted left, sighted down her scope, and pulled the trigger. One shot, north slope, target down, another shot, southeast tree line, confirmed impact. Tanner was shouting something beside her. She couldn't process it. Her earpiece screeched static, then Ghost 7 in position. It was her voice, but it felt like it belonged to someone else. Over the next 14 hours, Madeline became a machine. She shifted from rock to rock, always one step ahead of the heat signatures closing in. Her elevation was compromised by the second blast. Tanner was gone, his position obliterated in the first wave. Still, she stayed on mission. She reloaded twice, adjusted for angle, density, elevation drop, humidity. She accounted for Earth's curvature, for sunrise refracting through dust, for the blood on her own trigger finger. She shot until her shoulder bruised through 3 layers of padding. She shot until her hands stopped shaking. She shot until they stopped coming. 23 enemy combatants. Confirmed kills. None of them saw her. All of them fell. At 21:19, the rescue team finally broke through. A Black Hawk descended through the smoke like a bird made of ash. Medical crews moved fast, triaging what few bodies still clung to life. She didn't go down to meet them. She stayed in her hide, eyes dry, face blank. It wasn't until the last stretcher lifted off that she whispered into the comms again. Ghost 7 mission complete. Then she removed her headset, stood up, and disappeared. She didn't attend the memorial 2 weeks later. She didn't answer the debrief calls. She didn't open the envelope with the citation for valor. The only thing she kept was the patch. Black cloth. Number 7. For 2 years, no one heard from her. Then one day, a woman with no military insignia walked into a civilian contractor office outside Fort Tanner and asked to be transferred to Armory Maintenance. She didn't provide a resume. She just said, I fix things. They gave her the job because she cleaned and rebuilt a disassembled XM 2010 on the spot blindfolded. Madeline didn't speak of Corsai again, not even when Colonel Hayes found her 6 months later and offered her a promotion, a team, and a way back in. I don't lead anymore, she told him. Because you lost your unit, he asked. She looked him in the eyes and said, no, because I remember all their names. That's not leadership. That's grief. She built a new rhythm, simple, quiet. She woke before dawn, cleaned 6 rifles before coffee, worked alone, ate alone, slept with a loaded Glock on the table. Some nights, she stood out by the edge of the base and stared at the stars. Not to admire them, but to remember how many she'd seen in Corsai while holding a rifle over burning soil. One winter, she received a letter from the sister of Corporal Armand, one of her fallen teammates. It was short. They told us he died instantly, and we take comfort in that. I wanted to thank whoever kept the enemies away long enough for his body to be recovered whole. I hope you're still alive somewhere. Madeline folded the letter and placed it in the buttstock compartment of her M82. When newer soldiers asked why she stayed in the armory, she never answered, but the truth lived in her routine. Every bolt she calibrated was one more chance to prevent a malfunction. Every scope she aligned was one more chance to save someone. Every cloth-wiped barrel was her way of building back the world one precision at a time. There were 8 markers at Corsai Ridge now. Each one stood silent under a sun that never dimmed, on ground that still held echoes of gunfire. Only one person visited them each year, never in uniform. She knelt, not to pray, but to place a bullet casing at each grave, one for every man who had entered that valley with her, one for every name she never forgot. And when she stood, she didn't salute, she just whispered, I'm still here, then turned away. Back at Black Pine, a recruit once asked Colonel Hayes, Sir, who is she really? He thought for a moment. She's the reason some of us came back. And when a sniper fails to zero a scope, when a breech jams, when a rifle feels wrong in the hand, they call for her. The armory technician with eyes that never sleep, the woman who fixes things and carries graves behind her silence. The knock came at 0600 sharp. 3 raps. No urgency, no hesitation. Madeline Shore opened the door of the armory to find Colonel Barrett Hayes standing beside 2 men in charcoal suits. Clean cut, civilian ties, but their posture screamed federal. Major Shore, Hayes said, we need 10 minutes. She stepped aside without a word. They entered the armory like it was a boardroom, eyes scanning every detail, as if rifles could listen. The taller man spoke first, Director Harding, NSA. The other added, Deputy Director Velasquez, Counterterrorism. They didn't sit. Hayes laid a black folder on the bench beside her cleaning tray. We need Ghost 7. Madeline didn't move. That name's retired. Harding opened the folder. Satellite images. A high-elevation lodge in the Black Pine Range. Snowbound. Isolated. He slid them toward her. There's a summit happening in 9 days, he said. Arms dealers. Ex-intelligence operatives. Rogue financiers. We've identified 23 attendees. Madeline's eyes fixed on one image in the lower corner. Nikolai Ronsky, older, heavier, still arrogant. Velasquez spoke next. He's resurfaced under a false identity. Intel says he's coordinating a new weapons pipeline, targeting U.S. bases in Europe. Harding leaned in slightly. We need confirmation. Visual ID, signal for the task force to move. But the Lodge's defenses are extreme. The only viable shot is from a ridge 5 kilometers out. Silence filled the room. Then Madeline said, I'll need my own team. They hesitated. Ghost 7 worked alone. Harding countered. Not anymore, she replied. Who? Hayes asked. Reed Mallory for spotting, she said without pause. Rivera on security. Quan for comms and data sync. Harding frowned. Mallory's record shows disciplinary flags. His eye is unmatched, she said. And I've already saved his life once. Velasquez tried a different angle. Why not someone cleaner? Someone without emotional history. Madeline's tone sharpened. You came to me for something impossible. That means we do it my way. They left the armory 30 minutes later with no handshake, no pleasantries, just an answer. That night, Madeline found Mallory alone on the outdoor range. He stood still under the moonlight, a spotting scope in hand, watching snow blow across empty targets. I heard, he said before she reached him. They're sending you back in. She nodded once. I want you with me. He didn't respond right away. Then you shouldn't. Why? Because I've been hunting him. Maddie, for 3 years. I've submitted 5 mission requests, all denied. My file's flagged. I'm compromised. She looked him in the eye. I don't need clean. I need focused. He set down the scope. You think I'll go rogue? I think you want blood, she said. And I need someone who understands restraint. Mallory ran a hand through his hair. Exhaled. I don't care about metals or optics. His voice faltered. He's the reason they're dead. Madeline stepped forward. He's not the reason you're here. That stopped him. You are, she continued. You lived. So did I. Let's make that mean something. Briefing day came fast. Inside a secure room near the operations center, she laid out the plan. Insertion by helicopter at night. 12-mile ascent to the observation ridge. Build a snow hide. No comms until confirmation. 1 shot, 1 signal. No kill unless ordered. Rivera asked the only real question. What if he sees us first? He won't, Madeline replied. He doesn't believe we're still alive. Quan raised a brow. You sure about that? Madeline nodded once. He thinks he buried us at Corsai. Mallory looked away. After the meeting, he caught up with her in the corridor. You never mention it. Corsai. I don't need to, she said. It lives in all of us. He hesitated. Then why take me because you saw what I saw, and you chose to stay functional? He smiled bitterly. Functional? That's generous. She didn't smile back. Here's the condition. He straightened. We don't say the word Corsai again. Not out there, not during, not ever. He nodded. Understood. And Reed, she added, this isn't about revenge. I know. Do you? He hesitated. I will. Later that night, she sat alone in the armory. She took apart her rifle again. Same one she'd carried on the ridge. Same one she never let anyone touch. Each component told a story. Each groove, a decision. She wiped the chamber with slow, deliberate care. Then reached into the locker and pulled out a folded note. The letter from Armand's sister. Still tucked inside the buttstock. She didn't read it. She just held it, then put it back where it belonged. Hayes visited just before departure. You're sure about this? He asked. No, she said honestly. He nodded. Good. That's the right answer. She closed the rifle case, latched the final buckle. "They think I'm doing this for payback," she said. "You're not. I'm doing it," she said quietly. "So no one else has to." At 400 the next morning, the team assembled at the airfield. Dark sky, wind biting, gear loaded, faces set. River Eye wore an Olympic biathlon patch on her sleeve. Quan carried a comms rig he'd built from 3 different systems. Mallory looked like a soldier again, not a ghost. Madeline stood at the edge of the tarmac, silent, watching. When the chopper arrived, they boarded without fanfare. Just 4 shadows heading into frozen mountains. 1 shot, 1 signal, 1 mission. Inside the cabin, Mallory leaned toward her. "You believe he remembers your voice?" "I hope he does." He studied her face. "Why?" "So he'll know exactly who's watching him when it ends." The Black Pine Range waited ahead. Cold, brutal, silent. The kind of place no one returned from unless they were willing to disappear again. Madeline Shore didn't care about returning. She only cared about finishing the job right. Not with rage, not with bullets, but with discipline and restraint, and the kind of precision you earn through failure. Not glory. The mountain greeted them with silence and snow. No footprints, no echoes, just wind slicing across the high ridge like invisible blades. They moved in single file. Rivera led, her pace sharp and steady, barely sinking into the frost. Quan followed, eyes scanning GPS coordinates while recalculating elevation drift. Mallory adjusted for angle. Madeline brought up the rear, rifle case cradled against her back like something sacred. 12 miles in full gear. No fire, no comms, no mistakes. They reached the ridge just after dusk. The hide took 4 hours to build. A snow cave reinforced with carbon fiber ribs and mylar mesh. Inside, the space was tight but perfectly arranged observation point to the east. Comm station to the west. Firing platform dead center. From here, they had a direct line of sight 227 meters to the lodge across the valley. Madeline lay prone behind her rifle. Scope fixed on a stretch of glass windows 3 stories up. The only windows large enough for a shot. The only place Ronsky would stand and feel untouchable. Mallory adjusted the spotting scope beside her. "Wind pattern is dirty," he muttered. "Shears at 1,000 meters. Temp gradients shifting every half hour." She didn't answer. She'd already accounted for it. For 2 days, they watched. Helicopters arrived one by one, each carrying high-value targets, weapons traffickers, rogue generals, black market chemists, all greeted like old friends, laughed like kings. Ronsky came last. A sleek white aircraft touched down just after noon on the 3rd day. His coat was long, his smile thin. He moved like a man who believed in immunity. Mallory stiffened at the sight, but Madeline's breath didn't change. She didn't blink, just whispered, confirmed. The next 18 hours were spent mapping routes, schedules, and guard rotations. Quan intercepted encrypted transmissions confirming identities of the attendees. The picture was clear. This wasn't just a meeting, it was a command center, a new network, fully formed, ready to launch global chaos, the kind of summit that didn't get a second chance. Still, Madeline didn't take the shot. Not yet. Dawn broke on the 4th day. Snow still fell, but light now glimmered across the ice. Ronsky moved inside the lodge with calculated arrogance. Every few hours, he stood at the window, drink in hand, surveying his kingdom. Mallory was watching. "He's right there," he said. "Clean shot, center mass." Madeline remained still. "I know, you waiting for an invitation?" "No." He turned to face her. Then what she finally looked up. "I'm waiting for purpose." At 0900, Quan whispered into the headset, "Task force is in position. Full blackout authorization confirmed. Operation begins on visual signal." Rivera crawled into the hide. "We're the trigger." Madeline gave one small nod, then returned to her scope. 10 minutes later, Ronsky appeared again. Main hall, 3 guards, Wide window, Mallory whispered. Wind stable. Distance confirmed. 5,227 meters. She adjusted her finger on the trigger. One inhale, half exhale. The world narrowed. Her crosshairs found the man who had ended 8 lives, destroyed a unit, burned a part of her soul she hadn't spoken of in 7 years. And then, she shifted the scope left, by just 3 degrees. She fired. 10 seconds passed in stillness. Then, a sudden burst of sparks tore through the transformer behind the lodge. Lights vanished. Alarms flared. The compound dropped into blackness. From their earpieces, Kwan's voice. Signal received. Task force moving in. Mallory turned to her. Stunned. You missed. No, she said softly, already breaking down her rifle. I aimed exactly where I meant to. You could have ended him. I did. Just not the way you think. They dismantled the hide in silence, left no brass, no trace. By the time the first assault helicopters hit the compound, the team was already 10 miles away, hiking through wind and cold like ghosts returning to the world. Wronski never saw them, but he would remember the dark. Extraction was smooth. The helicopter picked them up on schedule at the drop site, just as the snow thickened again. No words were exchanged until they were in the air. Rivera sat with arms crossed, staring out the window. Kwan checked the live feed on a tablet. All targets secured. 0 casualties. Total success. Mallory leaned back, still processing. He's alive. They'll put him on trial. Madeline closed her eyes. Good. They returned to Black Pine 3 days later. The snow had melted just enough for gravel to crunch under boots again. Madeline walked into the armory like she never left. Same oil smell, same benches, same rack of rifles waiting for her care. Hayes met her at the threshold. They're offering you command again, he said. I know. They want you to train the next generation. Lead from the front. National platform. Full clearance. She walked past him, set her case down. I already have a job. He smiled. And what's that? She looked around the room. I fix things. Weeks passed. The mission remained classified, but rumors spread like smoke. Some said Ghost 7 returned. Others whispered about the blackout sniper who fired a single shot and ended a network. No one mentioned her by name. That's how she liked it. One afternoon, a new class of long-range trainees arrived at Black Pine. Among them was a young woman, nervous, eager, eyes full of questions. She approached Madeline during rifle check-in. Ma'am, she asked, is it true you had a shot and didn't take it? Madeline paused, wiped down the barrel in her hands, then looked the girl in the eye. Sometimes, she said, the hardest part of the job is knowing when not to fire. The recruit nodded, unsure if she understood, but Madeline did. Perfectly. That evening, she stepped out to the edge of the range. Alone. She set up her rifle, loaded a single round, and took aim at a steel plate 500 meters out. Not for records, not for glory, just to stay sharp. One breath, one squeeze, one silent impact in the distance. She packed up and turned to leave. Mallory was standing there. You didn't have to prove anything. I wasn't. He walked beside her toward the lights of the compound. You think she got it? He asked. The recruit. Madeline smiled faintly. Someday. Behind them, the targets stood in the snow still, cold, unchanged. But one woman knew precision isn't just about hitting a mark. It's about knowing which ones matter and which ones don't.